When Daniel was 13, around 1994, he had recognized the potential of creating websites for the fledgling internet, so he started a small home business making websites for clients. He charged his first client $100, but then charged the next client $200. The price was still below the industry average, so as demand for internet websites began to explode, soon Daniel could charge $5,000 per website. To help expand the business, Daniel recruited students from his computing class. He successfully bribed them with the promise of video games. His earnings would eventually reach $50,000 per month, and by age 18, he was managing a team of 25. His parents only noticed his earnings when he started bringing home those large TVs. As time progressed, the internet began to see the growth of downloading music illegally.
Since then, the world has changed for the Goliaths of the record industry. Sony, Universal, and others. The record companies say they will lose billions in sales because fans are getting their music for free, and they want banning stopped.
Observing the trend, Daniel realized something. Later in an interview, he states his realization, quote, "You can never legislate away piracy. Laws can definitely help, but it doesn't take away the problem. The only way to solve the problem was to create a service that's better than piracy and at the same time compensates the music industry." This idea was the basis for Spotify.
As a compounding pharmacist, I do consults, and I got into this because I really saw not just my own kids, but my own patients that were missing the food part. They were missing that nutrition part, and as I corrected nutrition in them, I'm like, oh my, this changed their whole life. We were taught in pharmacy school, just give a drug, give a drug, give a drug. Drugs are just Band-Aids. They don't cure us. If you don't have good nutrition, that foundation that we're building our body on isn't there. And so that leads to all sorts of things, depression, leaky gut, gum disease, people that are constantly having headaches, they're not growing properly. Our kids don't grow properly because of nutrition. So it starts with good foundation. If you have a good foundation with nutrition, eat it, what you grow, or buy it locally, you're going to be way healthier.
So crazy how your diet can affect pretty much everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to put into a sentence how cool and interesting I thought this whole experience was. I've always been a firm believer in what you put in your body matters and the food you put in your body matters. And we are allowing food industries to spray it with pesticides, to transport it super far, change its enzymes and nutritional benefits so that when we're receiving the food, it's not even giving us the fuel that we need to survive in a healthy way.
The body is an incredible piece of equipment, machinery. You put good stuff in, it gives good stuff out. If you put bad stuff in,
a lot of people can't get used to the short days or longer nights during the winter months. There are a lot of theories as to why that occurs. One of the theories is that we become desynchronized with the light-dark patterns because we don't get enough light during the day. So, some people can't really adapt to that. So they start having feelings like depression, withdrawal, carbohydrate craving, weight gain. And that typically goes away during the summer months. So that's really what characterizes what we call seasonal affective disorder known as winter blues. I think there are huge individual differences, but we know of studies where it appears that maybe 20 minutes of daily dosage of strong light is enough. And then we're talking about a light that resemble a daylight or an outdoor exposure. And this light dosage should be presented during morning hours. There's a couple of things that can be done. First of all, obviously go outdoor during the day. If you can, spend 1 to 2 hours outside. If you can't do that, sit by a window. But don't sit against the window. Sit facing the window because that's where you want to get the light. You want the light at the eye. And the third option is to increase the amount of light that you have around you. So if you're going to sit at a desk and work from home, add table lamps, add lamps around your computer screen. Add something that would increase that amount of light at the eye.
Probably the most interesting fact about human development is the frontal cortex is the last part of the brain to fully maturity. It's not completely online until you are about 25 years old, which is mind-boggling to think about. What does that explain? That explains why adolescents are adolescent in their behavior. The sensation-seeking and the risk-taking, and the highs are higher and the lows are lower. Because the steadying frontal cortical hang there isn't fully up to speed yet and everything else is a gyroscope, out of control. And that's where the impulsivity is from, and that's where the extremes of behavior, and that's why most crime is committed by people at a stage whose frontal cortex is not fully developed yet. That is why most people who do astonishing, wondrously self-sacrificial things don't have a frontal cortex that's fully in gear yet either, and is not in a position to convince them yet at somebody else's problem. Look the other way. That's why young adults are exactly how they are. Because the frontal cortex isn't quite there yet, and what you have, as a result, is more adventurousness and more open to novelty and more likelihood of seeing somebody who is very different as in fact not to being that different after all, and more likely to grab a cudgel and smash in somebody's skull who happens to seem like of them, and everything just the tone of everything is pushed up. One incredibly important implication of that is, if the frontal cortex is the last part of the brain to fully mature,
But what's actually going on during that process? Well, firstly, drowning isn't like how you see it in the movies. There's not a lot of thrashing around or yells for help. Typically, it's a silent act, where the person's mouth sinks below the surface of the water and then reappears as they try to breathe. Once they can no longer hold their initial breath and start to hyperventilate, they might aspirate water, triggering something called a laryngospasm. This is where the person's vocal cords spasm, blocking their airways and protecting their lungs. However, it also inconveniently makes yelling for help significantly harder to do. Since the person can't take in any fresh air, their oxygen supply starts to fall, potentially leading to a condition called hypoxia. This is where there's not enough oxygen reaching the body's tissues. And eventually, as the person becomes unconscious, there's a relaxation of their airway, allowing their lungs to fill with water. Depending on how long the person has gone without air, varying levels of damage can occur. For example, a 2013 study found that the likelihood of surviving with little to no brain damage was very low after being submerged for 10 minutes or more. The lack of oxygen can also lead to cardiac arrest. So, basically what I'm saying is that drowning is absolutely terrifying.